Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this video goes for my MIDI music theory and my MIDI music theory and my music theory from the ground up videos. The reason is we're going to be talking about pitch. Now, pitch is a super complicated topic. Like, it has been the subject. Oh my gosh, it's been the subject. We use what's called equal temperament tuning, which means essentially you take a note and then you move up by some interval. So first we need to understand what pitch is. Now I'm going to refer you to a few things. First, this is a complicated issue that in order to completely understand it or even talk about some of these problems, you have to know basic Western theory. You don't really need to if you know sound design. That's where this stuff comes from, math mostly. But it also comes from, like, it's something that's very listenable. You can definitely hear a difference. So you could go look up the subject on your own, but I recommend watching my sound and synth basics series and get up to the video about pitch. Watch all of them. You need to know about harmonics, partials, sine waves, fundamental frequencies, which people toss around like everyone knows what a fundamental frequency is, and it's just like, I don't know why they toss it around like that. They explain everything except like all the most important stuff to understand it. They don't explain any of the terminology. So go check that out, and then you can begin to understand tuning. So whenever we have a waveform that oscillates so many times a second, we'll call that hertz. So this is all explained in my series, but we'll call it hertz, and that will become a pitch. So for example, here I've got an instance of citrus loaded up, and operator 1 is oscillating at 500 times a second. That's the tone. And now if you bring it down an octave, which would be 250, so we've just cut it in half. That's half the tone. And if you were to play these at the same time, you would get something that sounds, let me turn this one off, put out 2. Oh, not 2, let's put out 3. So 3, I'm going to hit a key. So I'm going to hit a C key. You don't need to understand this right now, but that's 1. Now, if I play down an octave, which would be half the hertz as you just saw, it sounds like the same note. It's just been doubled in ratio. They perfectly overlap. Now, this is really great, but there's all these issues like fifths are no longer in tune, fourths, all these other things that we learn later on in theory. You'll learn what they are. And I just want to make you aware of this because it's a thing. So just so you know, that's a thing and you need to be aware of it. So let's really quick talk about something that is also very important on the subject of pitch. When you listen to a pitch, there's a whole bunch of additional notes. You'll learn this in my sound synth basic. That's where the basis of some tunings came from. Pythagoras was responsible for the ratio system. And there's all these other kinds of tunings that happen where you decide what ratios or what tones. That's basically what it is. We're going to be learning a 12-tone system. And the last thing I really want to say about pitch before just sort of letting you go do your own exploration. And there are books written on this subject. I'll probably have a much more in-depth video like way later. I'm not going to do it now. But it's interesting because there are two. So we just heard the octave thing. So we had 250 to 500. And then if we go from 500 to 1,000, we'll get another octave. But what's interesting is from 250 to 500, we just gained 250 hertz. That's what it's called when you add that many oscillations per second. So this waveform that you saw, this is the thing that's going up and down 250 times a second. So if we go to 500, we get that upper tone. So that's 250 hertz, but from 5 to 1,000 to go up another octave, now you have 500 hertz. So this means that we have more hertz in 5 to 1,000 than we do from 250 to 500. And so this means, now this just has to do with the way we hear things, but this means that according to the way we also tune things, if we can have low notes that are in tune, because think about this, our human, technically the range starts at 20 hertz. Well, that's not technically, never mind. It's just, that's the generally accepted, in general, it starts at 20 hertz. Like the best humans, like a healthy human can start hearing around that low of a tone. I can't really hear it. If you can, you got good hearing. So at that low of a tone, if we go up to an octave, we only go up to 40. That's 20 hertz. And in a 12-tone system where we have 12 notes, how are you going to equally space those in that 20? And how are you going to maintain that spacing between that and then when you go down the line, when you're at 10,000, you need to get an octave from 10,000 is 20,000. So now you have 10,000 hertz to express the same 12 tones. Well, what happened was, so we stick with our 12-tone system. We stick it all across the piano. Guitars are different. There's all these weird things that sort of come up, which is why it's a complicated topic. But microtonal system takes this into account. A lot of world tuning systems also realize this, but world tuning is sort of a different topic entirely. Not necessarily true. But if you ever listen to like music from India, where they have like the girls singing on those high notes where they go oh, like they hit all these tones that don't exist in Western harmony. They're just not there, but they have them in theirs because you can literally hear more pitches up there because you have more notes. You also probably come across this as you get going, if you get more into sound design ever, is that lower notes can actually never be in tune sometimes. And so you may need to pick just a different note because it just simply doesn't exist. Like you run into these weird issues because of the way these things have been set up. Right now though, so the big question is, why aren't we using microtonal systems? If you ever think of like a fretless instrument, like a violin, wherever that player puts their finger, they can get literally any pitch. They're trying to go for equal tempered. Well, technically, I guess they'd go for the harmonic temperament because they can get perfectly in tune. But then if they're playing with the rest of the group, it would make more sense to be perfectly out of tune with everyone else. It's this weird thing. So anyways, where they put so they've got their bow. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. I believe this is the way you would hold a violin. So that's bad because I own one, but I've like never really used it ever. But you put your finger down and you can get any pitch, any pitch. So you literally have a full microtonal system there. That's microtonal. Any fretless bass, stuff like that. A tonal system like piano, where each pitch has pretty much been pre-selected for you, that's equal tempered. And you can change tuning scales like in here. It's not, no, I mean, that's a tonal. This is tonal harmony, 12 tone. It's a tone system. We only have 12 tones no matter how high or how low we get. Versus on microtonal, we could play more notes in the upper ranges. And so that's an advantage they use. If you ever write world music, you're going to want to take that into account. So things can get pretty darn complicated. And so, yeah. So again, I recommend you watch the Sound Synth Basics series. At least get through the part about pitch. Watch all of them up to that. And I recommend you just go look up some stuff. Now we're going to be move on through the rest of the series because this is just an introduction to pitch. It's basically just notes. I just want you to understand why there are only 12 notes and where those notes come from. It's part of a ratio deal they decided a long time ago. It works really great. The main reason why it matters now is back then, if you had like an A sharp in let's use a G sharp and an A flat. In our 12-tone system, those are the same notes. That's all you need to understand is they're the same note. But in a system that is not equal tempered, those could have different tunings. Scales will literally sound different. You don't know I'm assuming you know nothing right now. So besides everything I previously covered. And so as a result, that might not mean much to you, but this is a huge deal. The ability to move between scales and they all sound the same. You can modulate keys and move things. And so things like jazz and other innovations might not have happened if we hadn't had interventions like this. The history is really interesting, but this is mostly for theory. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try and answer them the best I can. This is more just a topic just to make you aware and conscious that this is a thing. Subscribe and have a blessed day.